Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we are undertaking a monumental task.
We really are.
We're staring down the impossible. And I don't just mean, setting a big, ambitious goal. We're talking about those ambitions that feel utterly, completely unattainable.
The kind of goals that seem to mock you with how difficult they are.
Exactly. The true, against all odds achievements.
We have a phenomenal source guiding us today. It's this incredibly compelling, really detailed narrative that charts a truly staggering journey.
Staggering is the right word. It's about a pivot from what a predictable, very well-paid corporate life.
A life and data analysis of all things. And from there to establishing a fully sustainable, community-driven agricultural cooperative.
And not just anywhere.
No, not at all. In a region facing these profound systemic, economic, and cultural challenges. It's just layer upon layer of difficulty.
So our mission today is to really unpack this, not just to, admire the success at the end, but to understand the architecture of belief that's required to even attempt something like this.
Right. It's about the framework.
We want the tactical steps, the nitty-gritty moves, the financial gymnastics, the psychological fortitude needed to overcome all of it, the systemic hurdles, the financial ones, the purely personal ones.
And this is really your shortcut as a listener to understanding the blueprint you might need to build something monumental when you start with. Well, with virtually nothing.
Zero resources.
It's so crucial to frame this correctly for you. This isn't just a story about growing food or, setting up a small business.
No.
It's a blueprint for complete transformation, both on a personal level and for an entire community. The person in our source, they started with no land.
Which is kind of important for farming?
Just a bit. Zero capital, and maybe most critically, no direct experience in the field they chose. None.
So the story offers these profound, really actionable insights into how, absolute conviction and just relentless adaptability can overcome the most formidable deficits.
That's it, exactly.
Okay, let's unpack this. Starting with the seed of the dream and really the sheer audacity required to even think it was possible.
The audacity is where it all begins.
So when you first look at the goal in the source, this sustainable, community-driven agricultural cooperative, it sounds tough, for sure.
Yeah, it's a big project.
But then you factor in the specific location, the context, and the ambition just vaults from difficult to almost absurdly ambitious. What was this environment they were walking into?
The environment was the key multiplier of difficulty. The source is very specific here. It details a region that's characterized by chronic economic hardship.
Meaning what, exactly?
Meaning reliable jobs are scarce,
Sure.
Infrastructure is basically crumbling, basic resources we take for granted, clean water, good agricultural land were extremely limited.
Okay, so that's the physical and economic layer.
Exactly. But the biggest challenge, arguably, was cultural. You had these deeply entrenched traditional agricultural practices.
Which isn't necessarily a bad thing.
Not at all. Yeah. And these practices, they offered a very strong sense of cultural identity, of continuity. But they were often unsustainable in the face of, say, climate change. And they were highly, highly resistant to any kind of external pressure or innovation.
So you have this cocktail of high poverty, environmental stress, and a deep earned cultural skepticism.
The perfect storm of obstacles.
And yet the underlying why for this founder, it wasn't about personal profit. This was not a scalable tech startup they were building.
Precisely. It really transcended any simple entrepreneurial ambition. It was what you'd have to call a calling.
A calling.
Yeah, rooted in this really comprehensive vision. First, achieving tangible local food security.
Yeah.
Just the ability for the community to feed itself reliably.
Which is the most basic human need.
Then implementing genuinely sustainable regenerative practices that could actually heal the degraded land over time. Not just use it, but heal it. And maybe the most important piece, empowering local farmers to become true stewards of their own economic and environmental destiny. It was a purpose-driven goal that demanded absolute commitment.
While offering almost nothing in return, at least at first. Just the hope of a stable, better future for other people.
And that distinction is just.
Yeah.
It's absolutely essential. We see so many projects fail when that personal motivation, when it wanes.
Right, when the going gets tough.
But when the purpose is tied to community empowerment, the personal cost suddenly becomes justifiable. It moves the goal out of the realm of like an entrepreneurial risk. where you could just quit if it gets too hard.
And into the realm of a moral imperative.
That's the perfect way to put it. This sense of obligation to a mission larger than oneself is the initial sort of structural component of that belief architecture we were talking about.
Okay, let's talk about the initial stacks against this goal because they were astronomical. It starts with the career pivot itself.
A huge pivot.
The founder walked away from a stable, promising, and I'm guessing very lucrative corporate job in data analysis. That is a massive psychological and financial shock to the system.
And that shock was immediately compounded by this huge deficit of relevant expertise. The source is brutally honest about this.
Oh, so?
The founder had no background in agronomy, the actual science of soil management and crop production. Nothing.
Okay, so no farming experience.
And no experience in community development or, complex organizational leadership, which is exactly what a cooperative demands. You start not just in a financial hole, but in a massive expertise debt.
So the primary resource they had was what? Their ability to analyze complex systems from their old job?
That's it. A skill they had to immediately try to translate and reapply to farming, of all things.
And then the tangible deficits are just immediate. No land, which is the baseline for farming,
Right.
and no significant capital, which you need for literally everything else. If you're starting an agricultural project in a challenged region, those three things, land, money, expertise, are foundational, and they had none of them.
And that lack of capital, it just amplified the external skepticism. I mean, when you try to create radical change from a position of zero material strength, the social response is almost universally negative.
The source actually documents the specific reactions, doesn't it?
It does. Friends suggesting it was a midlife crisis,
Of course.
family advising extreme caution, viewing the decision as just financially reckless,
Yeah.
and former colleagues just dismissing it as a utopian pipe dream.
That pressure alone can crush a dream before you even plant the first seed. It's not just about logistics. It's fighting this constant social pressure that says you are fundamentally wrong or crazy or just deluded.
So how do you withstand that constant psychological erosion?
Well, this is where the source really stresses the anchor of personal motivation. The catalyst for all this wasn't intellectual. It wasn't some idea they read in a book.
It was empirical. It was visceral.
Right. It came from firsthand observations during volunteer trips, actually seeing rural communities just scraping by with smaller and smaller yields each year.
Observing the environmental degradation directly. Things like soil erosion, desertification. You can't unsee that.
And watching the youth just migrate to the cities out of sheer desperation because the land couldn't support them anymore. The problem was visible, it was urgent, and it was personal.
So the goal wasn't conceptual. It wasn't just a theoretical good idea.
No, it was a deeply felt response to witnessed suffering and systemic failure.
Precisely. And what's truly fascinating here, and what the source keeps coming back to, is the goal was fundamentally non-self-serving. It was a calling to create a future for other people.
And that external altruistic purpose provided the motivation needed to endure what was coming.
Absolutely. When your purpose is tied to the empowerment of a community, the option to just quit when things get difficult, it dramatically decreases. You're fighting for a shared, necessary future. And that profound purpose, that's the steel frame for the architecture of belief.
So moving from that foundational dream to the first practical steps, this meant the founder didn't just hit obstacles. The source says they hit 3 immense walls all at once.
At the same time.
Let's start with the one that paralyzes most ambitious social ventures, the financial mountain.
This barrier was truly paralyzing because the funding requirements were just enormous compared to their resources. They needed land, first of all.
Right, land acquisition.
Then equipment, basic infrastructure like irrigation piping, storage silos. And then the crucial piece, operating capital to last through that first planting cycle before any money comes in.
And the founder just burned through personal savings almost immediately.
Immediately, just on initial legal fees, site assessments, feasibility studies, the money was gone before they even broke ground.
And the traditional funding route, applying for big grants or loans, that failed right away.
Immediately. They submitted grant applications to dozens of foundations, NGOs, and the response was almost universally rejection.
And the reason was always the same.
Always the same. A lack of demonstrable experience and an unproven innovative track record in that specific region.
And this highlights a huge systemic issue, right? Established funding structures are built to de-risk investments.
Exactly. They reward proven success, which means revolutionary ideas starting from zero are, by definition, deemed too risky to fund.
So this forced an immediate just Brutal mandate for resourcefulness.
This is where that data analysis background became unexpectedly relevant.
Tell us about that resourcefulness, because the source suggests they became masters of financial gymnastics just to keep the project alive.
They did. They learned to stretch every dollar with this, like, painful intensity. But the most insightful detail in the source is the use of bartering.
What?
Yes. They weren't just penny pinching. They were actively leveraging the founders' corporate skills. For instance, they traded specialized data analysis services,
Like what?
like developing a rudimentary financial tracking system for a local accounting firm, or creating a sales dashboard for a small regional business. And in exchange, they'd get tangible services the co-op needed.
So not cash.
Not cash. Things like tractor maintenance or basic legal help or construction materials at wholesale cost. It was a non-cash economy built on their one marketable skill.
Hang on, I have to stop you there. This sounds like an incredible risk of mission drift.
How so?
Well, if you're constantly working long hours on these high-level freelance consulting gigs after spending the day trying to organize a cooperative, how do you stop the paying job from just completely overwhelming the mission?
That is the essential conflict. And the source addresses it by noting this really strict prioritization framework they developed. The freelance work was highly targeted. It was specific, short-term, high-value contracts that could be done remotely or very quickly. The founder treated it as a necessary evil, a funding mechanism only, and they strictly capped the time dedicated to it.
So the money was immediately earmarked.
Immediately. For specific, non-negotiable mission expenses, like buying seeds or fertilizer. It required just exceptional discipline to maintain that boundary. They knew that sacrificing sleep and leisure was the only alternative to total financial collapse.
So passion alone can't pay the bills, but leveraged corporate skills, bartered strategically, that can bridge the gap.
While you build the actual infrastructure, yes.
Let's transition to the second wall, which is often so much harder than the financial one. The wall of skepticism and cultural resistance.
This was a massive sociological challenge. I mean, money can be raised eventually. Trust has to be earned.
Especially in a community that had seen outsiders come and go.
Exactly. The farmers in that region were so wary because of a history of prior failed initiatives. The source details some specific examples.
What were those failures? Because understanding that past really helps explain the depth of the resistance they faced.
The history was basically scarred by two types of failure. First, you had these well-meaning, but just poorly executed NGO projects.
The classic parachute aid.
The perfect example, dropping off expensive, complex equipment, a new tractor, advanced processing machinery, with zero accompanying training, no maintenance plan, and no community buy-in.
And when the equipment inevitably broke.
The NGO was long gone, and the community was left with a useless, massive piece of metal and sometimes even debt.
And the second type of failure.
Short-term government initiatives. They'd promise subsidized fertilizers or seeds, but then pull the subsidy after one season, leaving farmers dependent and often economically ruined.
So the skepticism wasn't irrational at all. It was a deeply ingrained defense mechanism against more disappointment and economic ruin.
It was a survival strategy. So when this founder arrives with corporate background and data-driven plans, they aren't seen as an ally.
They're seen as the harbinger of the next inevitable failure.
Precisely. And the resistance was cultural, too. The traditional practices, even if they were less efficient, they offered stability, cultural identity, continuity.
So the initial corporate approach, the PowerPoint presentations with projected yields.
It meant absolutely nothing. It was the language of the exploitative outsider. The farmer's reaction was basically, we've been farming this land for 5 generations. What can your spreadsheet possibly tell us about our soil?
This required a radical pivot. How did the founder start to break through that wall?
It demanded a profound act of humility, a complete reversal of roles.
What does that mean in practice?
The founder didn't just visit the community. They spent months embedded in it, living simply, sharing meals, and participating in the daily, back-breaking chores.
So they stopped talking at the community.
And became a genuine student, learning the history of the land, the unique microclimates, the farmers' specific struggles and fears. The goal shifted from trying to convince them of the founder's plan to understanding why their current methods persisted.
That shift from consultant to student, that must have been the crucial turning point in gaining any credibility.
It was. And strategically, instead of positioning themselves as the sole expert, the founder invested a lot of effort in bringing in local agricultural experts.
People from the region.
Respected agronomists from the region who spoke the local language, understood the context, and they were explicitly positioned as peers to the farmers to foster collaboration, not consultation from above.
That's smart. It validates the community's own knowledge base.
And it begins the bridge-building process.
Okay, let's move to that third wall, the internal one. Overcoming internal limitations. The constant battle with imposter syndrome.
A huge one.
If you've just walked away from a career where you were highly competent to enter a field where you are a total novice, how do you handle that daily chorus of self-doubt?
And the sheer burden of required knowledge. The knowledge burden was just staggering. It was like a curriculum that no single university in the world offered.
A founder had to become this perpetual obsessive student.
And they had to learn across at least 5 distinct fields at the same time. Sustainable agriculture practices.
Like regenerative techniques, cover cropping.
Right. Then cooperative governance models, which are incredibly complex. Basic microfinance principles, community organizing, and conflict resolution. And, practical knowledge of how to fix a piece of farm equipment when it breaks down in the middle of a field.
So how did they manage that learning process? You can't just casually read books on all that. It requires applied, prioritized learning.
The source suggests a highly structured methodology. They adapted the intense learning habits from their corporate days. They didn't just read books, they sought out specialized online courses with practical certifications.
And they prioritized the information.
Based on immediate need, they learned basic equipment mechanics and how to install drip irrigation before they dove into complex supply chain management.
That makes sense.
And they spent their weekends volunteering on established organic farms, far away, just to gain that crucial, practical, tactile experience.
And what about mentorship?
That was key. They actively sought out veteran cooperative leaders who could offer guidance, often through weekly video calls. They acted as a crucial sounding board for complex governance decisions.
This relentless, structured, self-directed learning, it's the practical antidote to imposter syndrome, isn't it?
It is, but that level of dedication takes a massive, undeniable emotional toll.
The source is pretty open about that.
Very open. It talks about the severe emotional landscape, the exhaustion, the paralyzing loneliness of carrying the vision by yourself at first, the frustration of bureaucratic delays.
And the profound, terrifying weight of responsibility for the hopes of the first farmers who took that leap of faith with you.
It's an intense pressure cooker. It's where true resilience is either forged or where the dream just dies a lonely death.
So if the external challenge is that high and the internal struggle is so acute, how does one sustain that psychological resilience over years?
The source stresses intentional routines for self-care, viewing it not as a luxury, but as a necessary maintenance function.
Like what?
Finding solace in nature. The physical act of working the soil provided a grounding force, and strictly relying on a small, trusted circle of friends and former colleagues.
And this circle offered unwavering encouragement.
Unwavering and non-judgmental encouragement. They acted as a necessary buffer against the extreme pressure. It just confirms that even the most determined individuals need psychological anchors. The journey against impossible odds is too long and too treacherous to do it alone, psychologically.
So perseverance, as the source defines it, it's not about being stubborn, it's about strategic flexibility.
And recognizing when a strategy has failed.
We saw the initial large grant strategy fail over and over. This required a critical pivot, didn't it? From chasing that big, unattainable funding to focusing on smaller, fun components.
That's the key tactical shift. The founders stopped viewing the cooperative as one massive project that needed a multi-million-dollar injection.
And started seeing it as what?
As a collection of interlocking, smaller systems. The tactical approach shifted to breaking the massive goal into these bite-sized components that required manageable, proven investment.
And this allowed them to appeal to smaller, local foundations.
Exactly. Foundations that were interested in tangible impact metrics, not just high-risk, unproven innovation.
And this led to the breakthrough. The first real success came from a local foundation that funded a pilot project. Let's talk about the specifics of this demonstration plot. It wasn't just a little garden, was it?
No, not at all. It was a crucial, highly visible proof-of-concept laboratory. The foundation funded a small-scale plot, about 1 hectare.
Okay.
And it was focused on a single, high-value, drought-resistant crop, maybe a specialized grain or legume that was in high demand.
And the choice of drought-resistant was critical.
So critical. It directly addressed the community's single greatest fear, which was climate instability. And it provided this clear visual contrast to the struggling traditional crops right next to it.
And what was the immense value of this small win? It seems small on paper.
It provided tangible, visible, local proof of what was possible. The community could walk by and observe that plot every week.
They could see the results with their own eyes.
They could see the better yields, the healthier soil from the cover cropping, the lower water usage because of the drip irrigation. It turned the founders' abstract corporate projections into a measurable, living reality right there in their own village.
And that immediately created a foundation of trust that no PowerPoint presentation could ever match.
Not in a million years.
This success then paved the way for that iterative approach you mentioned. Test, learn, adapt. The source is very clear that the initial cooperative model was too complex.
It completely overwhelmed farmers who were just focused on the daily struggle for subsistence.
That complexity had to be ruthlessly simplified.
It did. The initial idea might have involved, immediate full profit pooling and collective debt ownership. That feels terrifying to individuals who are used to managing their own risk.
So the pivot strategy focused on what first?
Initially, only on shared resources and market access.
Can you give us a concrete example of that simplification?
Certainly. Instead of complex profit-sharing agreements, they started with shared equipment usage. The pilot plot success allowed them to buy one communal tractor and a seed drill.
And the governance model was simple.
The model was basically, we share the tractor and its maintenance costs, and we collectively organize transport to the market to get better bulk prices. That's it.
So individual farmers still had autonomy over their own plots and profits.
Exactly. Collective decision-making about things like future crop strategies. That was only introduced gradually as the tangible benefits of sharing resources proved reliable, and that trust started to grow.
This iterative approach became the working mantra.
Prove the value of one component, then build the next layer of complexity on top of it.
This flexibility, knowing when to simplify the dream without abandoning the core vision, that's a hallmark of real strategic perseverance. Stubbornness says, it must be my way.
While perseverance says, it must work. And it adapts the method constantly based on feedback and failure.
Now, let's talk about the key turning point. The defining moment when the project truly transitioned from being the founder's vision to the community's shared goal.
The anecdote in the source about the equipment breakdown. It's critical.
Tell us about it.
The specific incident was just terrifying. A crucial piece of harvesting equipment, a used combine they had just acquired, broke down completely during peak harvest.
The worst possible time.
The weather was turning, the rains were coming, and the entire year's income was threatened by this delay. Morale just plummeted. It felt like that old pattern of failure was reasserting itself.
And it could have been the final fatal blow. If the founder had responded by just pulling an all-nighter trying to fix it alone, what would that have signaled?
It would have confirmed the farmers' initial fears, that the founder was just another outsider who still believed they had to solve everything single-handedly. It would have reinforced that the cooperative was the founder's burden, not theirs.
But the community response was the opposite.
It was magnificent. Instead of standing back and waiting, the farmers rallied. And they didn't just offer moral support, they offered tangible solutions.
What did they do?
They brought their own small, aging tools. They pooled their own money immediately, without being asked, to help cover the cost of repairs. A large group worked tirelessly, using their collective, multi-generational knowledge of mechanics and improvisation.
Working through the night.
Through the entire night, by lantern light. Sometimes manually processing crops, sometimes jury-rigging the machinery, just to save the harvest.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this moment demonstrated a profound transition.
It showed that the goal had transitioned from the founder's personal risk to our shared imperative. Their collective determination, their spontaneous investment of time and resources. That became the most powerful source of motivation.
It proved the cooperative had generated something more valuable than high yields.
A self-sustaining social fabric. A web of mutual responsibility that was fundamentally stronger than any logistical or mechanical setback. The machine breaking down was the ultimate test.
And the community passed, proving that their collective will had become the true engine of the cooperative.
As the cooperative moved past just surviving, the nature of the challenge evolved. It shifted from proving the concept to ensuring long-term institutional sustainability.
And scaling the impact.
Which required the founder to transition again, from a motivated novice to a truly strategic, perpetual student of complex systems.
What did that continuous learning look like? It couldn't just be about better planting techniques anymore.
Oh, absolutely not. The scope broadened dramatically. They needed sophisticated learning in market dynamics, understanding seasonal price fluctuations, knowing when to store versus when to sell.
Anticipating demand shifts.
Right. They needed to master supply chain management with zero existing infrastructure. Then they faced the challenge of achieving formal organic certification, which is incredibly complex and requires meticulous, ongoing record keeping.
And they had to navigate local politics.
To ensure regulatory support and protect their land tenure. It was a whole new level of complexity.
And the skills required went way beyond the technical. You're talking about high-stakes leadership skills now.
The soft skills became paramount. They had to master negotiation, not just with buyers, but within the cooperative, mediating conflicts between members about shared resources.
And the art of inspiration.
Yes, maintaining that optimism and focus even when they felt personally just depleted. This meant developing empathy for the farmers' economic pressures while maintaining the rigor needed for high-quality certified production.
Let's delve into technology for a minute, because this is where that balance between respecting tradition and seeking efficiency became so key.
It was a delicate balance. The initial focus was very traditional, but they realized that appropriate technology was absolutely necessary.
The realization being that technology shouldn't replace tradition.
It should enhance profitability and resilience. The founder sought to identify appropriate technologies that addressed specific, high-leverage pain points.
Give us the specific examples that worked and how they overcame that resistance to new methods.
The primary examples are simple drip irrigation systems and smartphone apps.
Drip irrigation.
It was revolutionary because it drastically reduced water usage, mitigating that drought risk we talked about, and it led to measurable yield increases, a benefit that was immediately visible.
But the challenge was training.
So they implemented a peer-to-peer training model. Younger, more tech-savvy members were taught by the founder, and then those young members taught the older generation, emphasizing how easy the maintenance was and the clear return on investment.
And the smartphone apps, that seems like a big leap for a traditionally focused community.
It was very strategic. They weren't using complex enterprise software. They used basic, widely available apps, often free ones, that tracked real-time commodity prices in nearby urban markets.
Which gave the farmers market power.
For the first time, genuine market power. It ensured they weren't being exploited by middlemen who had previously controlled all the price information.
And the implementation philosophy was key.
Introduce innovations gradually, demonstrate the clear, quantifiable financial benefit, and ensure they were easy for everyone to learn. The technology served the community. The community did not serve the technology.
That dedication to enhancing tradition, not replacing it, must have neutralized a lot of that initial cultural resistance.
It absolutely did. The innovations were presented as tools for empowerment and risk mitigation, not as a judgment on their ancestors' methods.
Scaling success also meant building external bridges, not walls. The founder had to become fluent in dealing with all these different external actors.
Government agencies, international NGOs, commercial partners.
And this required learning to speak multiple languages, as the source puts it.
That's a great way to describe it. When negotiating with an international NGO for a future partnership, the dialogue had to focus on impact metrics.
Like
Return on social investment, reduction in youth migration rates, carbon sequestration data, improved nutritional outcomes. The language of social impact.
But when talking to a commercial buyer, that language shifted entirely.
Completely. Commercial buyers care about three things: quality, consistency, and supply chain reliability.
So the founder had to present sharp financial projections.
And demonstrate standardized quality control protocols, and prove they could deliver consistent volumes over a whole season. They also had to articulate community benefits for those premium buyers interested in ethical sourcing. But the core pitch was always about meeting rigorous commercial standards.
Mastering these different communication styles was essential.
For securing market access, regulatory support, all of it. You cannot scale a sustainable social enterprise without engaging the broader ecosystem, and that requires bespoke communication.
Finally, let's just revisit the critical anchor of those support systems. Who were the unsung heroes who sustained the founder through all this?
The source dedicates significant space to these anchors. Beyond the initial farmers, you had the unsung heroes.
Who were they?
Early volunteers who provided crucial pro bono services. A lawyer who handled the incorporation paperwork for free. A retired agronomist who visited once a month, offering free technical consulting.
A network of former corporate colleagues.
Who offered to help with administrative tasks, like proofreading grant applications. Small things that made a huge difference.
And what about the personal, emotional anchors?
The emotional support system, friends and family. They evolved past their initial skepticism, They shifted from advising caution to offering concrete support. They became the people who, when the founder was exhausted and ready to quit, offered not solutions, but just a reminder of the why.
And practical assistance.
Spreading the word, running errands, and critically, making sure the founder prioritized self-care. They were that constant, quiet hum of belief, a necessary psychological buffer.
The ultimate support system, though, was the cooperative community itself.
It had transformed from just a business entity into this powerful social fabric. This shared ownership and mutual support became the bedrock against the overwhelming odds. The community's belief was the fuel. The founder's adaptation was the engine.
And together, they proved that collective determination is the most powerful resource you have when you're starting from zero. The narrative of this deep dive, it doesn't culminate in a single dramatic victory. It's more about the slow, satisfying accumulation of milestones.
Proof points that the architecture of belief was structurally sound.
The source documents these significant markers that signaled sustainability. The cooperative successfully secured an innovative capacity-building grant.
The very type they were initially rejected from, which proves their track record was now established.
And this funding allowed them to purchase essential communal processing and storage facilities.
Giving them more control over the value chain, a huge step.
And the market viability was finally solidified. Their ethically grown produce moved beyond just local stalls.
They started securing contracts with reliable, niche urban outlets willing to pay a premium for certified goods. They proved that idealism and economic viability are not mutually exclusive.
But the most powerful evidence of triumph really lies in the human moments, which is where the source shines.
Seeing them fill an entire 10-ton truck for market for the first time, just a visceral symbol of collective effort and scale.
And witnessing the tangible economic improvement. Farmers describing new school uniforms for their kids, better access to health care.
Visible improvements in family nutrition. And the confidence shown by the farmers themselves, actively debating complex future strategies, crop diversification, long-term investments during the annual general meeting.
That shift from subsistence farming to strategic business ownership it's profound.
It is the essence of dignity. And the ultimate proof is that anecdote the source describes. Overhearing an elderly farmer, who was initially one of the most resistant, explaining with immense pride to a newcomer how our cooperative had transformed their lives. He wasn't talking about the founder. He was talking about collective achievement.
He was describing the regenerative practices they were using, the current market prices.
With an expert, owner-level understanding.
And that anecdote just captures the entire thesis. The goal was achieved when the community fully adopted the vision as their own, transforming it from an external project into an internal source of lasting empowerment. The odds had been defied by unity.
So let's synthesize the core lessons that were etched in the founder's soul, because these are the principles that apply to any monumental endeavor you might undertake.
The first lesson the source notes: belief is the blueprint.
This emphasizes that unwavering belief in the vision is what sustains you when logic and external validation are scarce. That initial illogical leap of faith was the very first structural component that had to be in place. If they had waited for validation, the project never would have begun.
Second, obstacles are opportunities in disguise. The source makes a phenomenal case that every rejection, every logistical challenge, every cultural clash forced innovation and adaptation.
If that large grant had been easy to get, they would have purchased the wrong equipment, ignored the iterative approach, and failed to build the deep trust that ultimately guaranteed the co-op's success. The setbacks created the necessary resilience.
Third, humility and listening are superpowers. True leadership, especially in this kind of transformation, meant discarding ego. It meant asking the right questions.
Genuinely listening to the community's ancestral wisdom and embracing a perpetual learner's mindset. That humility unlocked a cultural integration that no amount of capital could have ever purchased.
Fourth, small steps accumulate to giant leaps. The goal of a massive, sustainable cooperative was just too overwhelming to tackle directly.
But breaking it down into manageable tasks, funding that one pilot plot, securing a single piece of shared equipment, and focusing on consistent incremental success made the impossible feel merely improbable, and then eventually achievable.
Fifth, the strength of collective effort is unmatched. This was never an individual victory, it was a communal one.
The power of a shared vision and mutual support is what transformed a struggling initiative into a thriving enterprise. For any large-scale change, identifying and fostering that collective spirit is the highest strategic priority.
Sixth, resilience is forged in fire. The capacity to bounce back from failure, to persist through exhaustion, it's not a trait you're born with.
No, it's actively developed in the crucible of extreme challenge. Every time the founder was tempted to give up, when the equipment broke, when the money ran out, and chose instead to adapt and continue, their resilience was strengthened.
And finally, the seventh overarching lesson, which connects the entire narrative.
The why must be stronger than the how. The deeply rooted purpose, that commitment to creating tangible, positive change for the community and the environment, it transcended the countless challenges of how to secure the land, how to raise the capital, how to build the trust.
Because the why was clear, the how eventually revealed itself through relentless adaptation and learning.
What a transformation this source outlines. We've moved from a founder staring at spreadsheets in an unfulfilling corporate job, burdened by imposter syndrome,
to a strategic community leader presiding over a thriving cooperative that is financially self-sustaining, environmentally regenerative, and a profound source of dignity for an entire community. The complexity of the challenge was only matched by the rigor of the solution.
This raises an important question. The source material is, in essence, a roadmap. It's urging you to listen to your own against-all-odds dream.
Be it a massive career pivot, an ambitious project, or a profound personal challenge.
And the core lesson here isn't just about individual grit. It's that the greatest strength required to move mountains comes not from individual expertise or financial capital, but from finding and fostering a collective spirit, and then applying relentless, targeted learning to every single obstacle you encounter.
So we leave you with this final provocative thought, rooted in the tactical success of this cooperative. What is the one thing you need to build your tribe around, that shared purpose that is larger than you? And what is the smallest, most fundable pilot project, the smallest tangible piece of proof, that 1 hectare demonstration plot you can start today to prove your seemingly impossible vision is actually achievable? Go ahead, defy the odds. The blueprint is already etched in the soul of the journey.
Hello, welcome to the Learn English Lab. Today's Advanced English Listening Practice Deep Dive focuses on a truly powerful theme, conversations that changed my life.
And this isn't just about sharing a heartwarming story. I think what we really want to do today is treat this personal narrative as a kind of a map, really.
A blueprint, maybe.
A blueprint, that's the word. For recognizing those pivotal moments in your own life. We're looking at how a single, totally unexpected conversation led to a complete 180 life change for someone.
And for you listening, if you're looking for those aha moments, this story is it's such a clear example of how that kind of profound insight can just appear.
Right. It's not planned. It often comes when you're right on the edge of, total burnout.
That's the real key, isn't it? This wasn't some high-priced coaching session or planned intervention.
No, not at all. It was like an accidental philosophical meeting in a coffee shop.
So we're going to trace this journey from this deep, sort of quiet corporate misery all the way to purposeful, decisive action. And the scene is just so vivid. A dreary, rainy afternoon in Seattle, October 2018.
Just soul-sappingly rainy, as they say.
Exactly. And our protagonist, he's in his mid-30s. On the surface, he's the picture of success. Great job in tech, benefits, stability.
All the boxes tick.
All the boxes. But underneath all that, he was dealing with this profound burnout, this kind of low-grade numbness that was just quietly stealing his life.
And it's that gap, right? The gap between how things look and how they actually feel. That's what makes this so relatable.
It really is. So to understand the punch of this conversation, we have to start with just how bad things were before it happened.
Yeah, you have to set the stage of discontent.
So let's really get into the protagonist's mindset leading up to that day. He called it the hollow routine.
The hollow routine. Oof.
Yeah. I mean, he was in his mid-30s just grinding it out. He was completely on autopilot. Wake up at 6 a.m. The slow, soul-crushing commute. 9-10 hours just staring at screens in this high-pressure tech job.
And we should probably get a little more specific about that job because it's kind of central to the whole problem.
It is.
He wasn't, creating the next life-changing app. He was managing these huge legacy system integrations for, financial services companies.
So important work, technically.
Yeah.
Very skilled, very high paying.
Oh, incredibly skilled. But there was no human element to it. It was all about efficiency metrics and, making sure the quarterly reports looked good, not about actual human impact.
And that's the trap. He's getting paid a lot of money to solve these really complex puzzles, But the solutions themselves gave him absolutely zero personal fulfillment.
Zero. The whole cycle was built for endurance,
Yeah.
not for joy.
And so the workday ends. And it's not about relaxing. It's about mitigation.
Damage control, that's what it was. He'd race to the gym, not because he loved it, but just to work off the insane stress that had built up all day.
And then what? Collapse on the couch with Netflix.
Exactly, just using distraction so he didn't have to actually think about his life. And of course, anything deeper like hobbies or writing or even just seeing friends, that all got pushed to the side.
And the cost of that was just huge. The weight of these unspoken regrets. He had real dreams, starting his own education tech company, traveling, writing a novel.
But those dreams just got buried under spreadsheets. They became like a footnote in his own life story.
It's so sad. And you can trace the roots of it, can't you? His parents were Midwestern middle-class educators.
Right. And they instilled this deep belief that hard work is everything and success is defined by stability.
The steady paycheck, the health benefits, the stock options.
And he got all of it. He did everything they taught him to do. He won the game by their rules.
And the irony is just crushing. The chase for stability didn't lead to happiness. It led to numbness.
A subtle thief of joy. That's such a great phrase for it. He wasn't like actively miserable, which is why it was so hard to put his finger on it. He was just flatlining.
And that emotional flatline, that numbness, that's the exact state you need to be in for something to shake you.
He was primed for a catalyst, and that's when the catalyst walks in. Or rather, he walks in on the catalyst.
He ducks into this coffee shop in Seattle. It's packed. Rain is just hammering the windows. He's just looking for a dry, warm place to sit.
And every table is taken. That classic annoying feeling.
Except for one tiny corner table with an elderly gentleman sitting there by himself. And he makes this tiny decision. He just asks, "Excuse me, may I share your table?"
And that one question changes everything.
So this man, Harold, he's just sipping a black coffee, looking totally at peace in all this chaos.
And the first clue, the first little signpost, is the book he's reading, a really worn paperback copy of Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl.
Pages all dog-eared and highlighted. You can tell this book has been read and read again.
Yeah, this isn't a casual read.
So the protagonist, he's still in his corporate mindset, and he makes some offhand comment like, "That's a bit heavy for a Tuesday afternoon."
And Harold just smiles, this really warm smile, and says something simple. He calls the book life-changing.
Yeah. He says he's read it a dozen times since he retired, and he gets something new from it every single time.
So right away, this isn't going to be a normal conversation.
Not at all. And it moves from the weather to, what do you do? And our guy explains his impressive-sounding tech job, optimizing cloud infrastructure, enterprise clients, the kind of thing that sounds great at a party.
But feels totally hollow when you're alone at night.
Exactly. And Harold, he just listens. He nods. He acknowledges how hard it must be, how much it must pay, and then he just cuts right through all of it.
With the hook question.
The hook question. But what do you love doing?
Boom. Just like that.
The silence must have been just deafening. You can just picture him, stirring his coffee with no answer. That one question just punctured the whole facade.
And he finally admits it. I don't know. Work keeps me busy.
And Harold's response is so gentle, but it's so profound. Busy isn't the same as fulfilled.
Busy is often just a sophisticated form of procrastination.
Wow. And then he opens up about himself, right?
Right away. He confesses he spent 40 years in finance, retired with a huge nest egg, but just wishes he'd asked himself that same question decades earlier.
And that vulnerability, that's what gives him instant credibility. This isn't some guru talking down to him.
No, this is a guy who's already lived it. He's a man who won the race and is now warning him that the finish line isn't what he thinks it is.
And that's what makes him listen.
So the small talk is over. The conversation it deepens really fast. Harold isn't just chatting anymore. He's laying out this kind of blueprint for a meaningful life, using his own as the example.
Yeah, he starts synthesizing his own story. And his background is that classic story of post-war ambition,
Born in 1945, working-class Chicago.
Right, so for him, education wasn't just an opportunity, it was a lifeline. He worked his tail off, got scholarships, an MBA, and by the time he's 30, he's a rising star in investment banking.
He's achieved everything he set out to achieve. The American dream. But then he details the cost, the personal cost of that ambition, and it is devastating.
He talks about all the missed moments, the soccer games, the anniversaries, just reading his kids a bedtime story. He admits that his career didn't just take up his time, it took up his entire emotional bandwidth.
And he shares this one incredibly painful conversation with his wife, Eleanor. She just lays the truth on him. He remembers her exact words. Harold, you're building a life without living it.
Oof, that's a gut punch.
It's brutal. And it wasn't this big dramatic fight. It was just this slow, sad drift apart that ended in divorce.
And his reaction at the time was just to work harder, right? He thought if he just made more money, he could fix the emotional damage.
Which is such a common, tragic mistake. You can't patch a hole in your soul with dollar bills.
And the real wake-up call wasn't emotional. It was physical.
A massive heart attack.
At
55.
And lying there in that hospital bed, that's when it finally clicked. He literally said he realized he had traded my health for a portfolio. The doctors were totally clear about it. The chronic, nonstop stress was the direct cause.
And that crisis is what forces him to change. He stops chasing money and power, and he starts actively searching for meaning. He dives into philosophy, Frankl, Camus, Eastern traditions.
And his conclusion is so simple. Meaning isn't in your bank account. It's in purpose, it's in connection, it's in contribution.
Which brings them right to the core of the whole conversation, Viktor Frankl's logotherapy.
Right. And for listeners who might not be familiar, the basic idea is that our main drive in life isn't pleasure or power, but the search for meaning.
And Harold saw his own life reflected in that perfectly. His original motivation money had just been masking that deeper human need for purpose.
So he takes Frankl's philosophy and applies it directly to the guy sitting across from him. He uses that famous quote, the one Frankl came up with after surviving the Holocaust.
The last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances.
And then he poses the challenge. What's your attitude toward your life right now?
And our protagonist gives this weak answer, right? It's fine, it's stable.
And Harold just doesn't let him get away with that. He says, fine is a four-letter word. Stability is wonderful for bridges, but life is too short to settle for merely fine.
I love that. He's saying, look, you can't control the economy or your DOS, but you can always, always control your attitude. That's where your real freedom lies.
And to really crack the whole thing open, Harold uses this classic hypothetical question.
The one that forces the real dreams out into the open.
Exactly. He says, tell me, if money were no object and you absolutely could not fail, what would you do?
And that's not just a thought exercise. That's like emotional archaeology. You're digging for something that's been buried.
And for the first time, he says them out loud. Starting a tech company, for education, for underserved schools, or just taking the time to write a novel. Things that actually gave him a jolt of excitement.
But then right after that excitement comes the
fear.
The fear. He admits it. Fear of failure, fear of instability, fear of disappointing his parents.
And Harold just names it instantly. Fear the great paralyzer. He says the fear of what other people will think is what stops us from figuring out what we think.
He even connects it to his heart attack. His fear of being poor made him work himself into a health crisis that nearly cost him everything anyway. The fear was a false god.
But Harold doesn't just leave it at philosophy. He gives him a practical example of his own transformation.
He quit finance, he downsized his whole life, and he started volunteering at a literacy program, not just writing a check giving his time.
And he shares this story about seeing grown men cry when they finish their first book.
Yeah. He talks about teaching a 45-year-old construction worker how to read a bedtime story to his own kid. And he says that feeling that was worth more than any bonus he ever got on Wall Street.
That's a definition of value that just hits you in the chest. It's not abstract.
Not at all. And then he literally hands over a toolkit. He recommends 2 books, The Alchemist, for the courage to chase your dreams.
And Meditations by Marcus Aurelius for Stoicism.
And we should pause on that because Stoicism is so important here. It's not about being emotionless.
No, it's about knowing what you can control and what you can't.
Exactly. For someone thinking about a startup, that's huge. You can't control if investors say yes or if your code has a bug, but you can control your effort, your reaction, your persistence. That's a game changer.
And then he gives him something he can use that very day, a practical tool for stress.
The 4-4-4 breathing exercise. Inhale for 4, hold for 4, exhale for 4.
So simple. An anchor you can use in the middle of a stressful meeting to just ground yourself.
So after 2 hours, the coffee shop is emptying out. Harold just scribbles his email on a napkin, and his last piece of advice just sums it all up.
He calls conversations like theirs signposts, and he just says, follow them, don't ignore them.
And the change is immediate. Our guy walks out, the rain has stopped, the sky is clearing. It's a perfect metaphor, really.
And he says the world just felt sharper, more vibrant. He didn't get a business plan, he got a lifeline on a napkin.
It's one thing to have this big philosophical moment, but the real test is what you do the next day, right?
Absolutely. And the power of this whole thing is how quickly it translated into real, actual changes. This is where the hard work really started.
So that night, the pattern breaks. No Netflix.
Instead, he finds this old journal he hadn't touched in years, and he writes pages and pages about his dreams, his fears. He described it as lancing a boil.
That's a strong image, just getting all that poison out.
When you write your anxieties down, they stop being this big, scary cloud, and they become, words on a page. You can actually look at them.
That first step is often the hardest, just admitting how big the gap is between the life you have and the life you want.
And then at work, he started making these small changes that were actually huge acts of courage.
Boundary setting.
Boundary setting. For a guy whose whole value was based on being available 24/7, this was radical. He started saying no.
No to extra projects, no to pointless meetings that ran over.
He even carved out an hour for lunch. A non-negotiable hour where he would leave his desk and read a book instead of scrolling through his phone.
That sounds so simple, but in that kind of corporate culture, saying no is a massive risk. You have to really believe that your own well-being is more important than those external metrics.
And he started using Harold's tools right away. He tried the 4-4-4 breathing during a tense client meeting.
And it worked.
It worked. It grounded him. It stopped him from having that knee-jerk, stressed-out reaction. These were small wins, but they built momentum.
They proved he could actually manage his stress, not just run away from it.
And he started feeding those old passions. He signed up for an online writing course.
Oh, that's great.
And the first assignment was to write about a pivotal moment in his life. So, of course, he wrote about Harold. He was basically documenting his own origin story as it was happening.
The ripple effect just kept spreading, right? Into his social life, his health.
All of it. He realized how isolated he'd become. So he started reaching out to old friends, the ones he'd been too busy for.
And those conversations probably got deep, fast.
They did. A weekend hike turned into this 6-hour talk about life goals. He realized that sharing his vulnerability actually made him stronger, and that other people were feeling the same way.
And then there was the health side of things. He looked at his gym drudgery, as he called it.
Yeah, that punishing exercise just to burn off stress.
Yeah.
He saw it for what it was, another form of escape.
So he switched to yoga.
He switched to yoga. And the intention was completely different. It was about being present in his body, not just exhausting it.
And the physical benefits were real. He slept better, his anxiety levels dropped. I mean, Harold's heart attack story was this huge warning sign that he actually listened to.
And he used Harold to keep the momentum going. They met for coffee again a month later.
And Harold was still just living life to the fullest, traveling to India, learning Hindi at 65.
That detail about learning Hindi is so important. It shows a willingness to be a beginner again, to embrace being uncomfortable.
Which is exactly what you have to do if you're going to start a new company. You have to be willing to not know things.
But, it wasn't a straight line. Change never is. He had doubts.
Of course. He probably wondered if he was just, romanticizing this one conversation, if it was just a temporary high.
Totally. And that's where the philosophy came in. He had to lean on that Frankl quote about choosing your attitude. Instead of seeing doubt as a sign he was wrong, he reframed it.
He saw it as proof that he was actually moving outside his comfort zone. Doubt wasn't a stop sign. It was just a landmark on the new path.
And that ability to manage his own internal monologue, that was the real muscle he built in those first few months. It's what prepared him for the huge leap that was coming next.
So if the first few months were about small ripples, the next year was a tidal wave.
It really was. A year after that coffee meeting, he did it. He walked away from the 6-figure corporate job.
And we have to be clear with the listener here. This was not an impulse decision.
Not at all. He didn't just storm out one day. He spent that year preparing. He saved up enough money to live on for a year. He was networking like crazy in the education world.
And most importantly, he had built a working prototype of his idea before he quit. This was a calculated risk, not a leap of faith.
And the result was the launch of his EdTech platform. And it was very specific. It used AI to create personalized learning paths for kids in rural and underserved schools.
Let's get into that a little bit because it's pretty cool. The platform wasn't just giving them quizzes, it was using adaptive learning, so the AI could figure out exactly where a student was struggling.
And then it would deliver these custom little lessons to fill in those specific gaps. He was using his high-level tech skills for something that had a real tangible social impact.
He swapped the meaninglessness of corporate systems for the profound meaning of helping a kid learn to read better.
And Harold became his unofficial advisor through all of this.
The mentor. So during that terrifying early startup phase, investors saying no, the website crashing.
All of it. Harold was the voice of calm, reminding him again and again, fear is the paralyzer. He taught him to see rejection as data, not as a judgment on his worth.
And that resilience, that philosophical backbone, it worked. After 6 brutal months, he landed his first round of seed funding.
And now, the platform is serving thousands of students. It has partnerships with school districts. It's a real successful, purpose-driven company.
The professional success is amazing, but the personal transformation is just as profound. He actually built a life based on the lessons he learned from Harold's regrets.
He met his partner, Sarah, at a book club. And you can't make this up.
I know where this is going.
They were discussing Viktor Frankl.
Of course they were. The synchronicity is just perfect.
And they consciously built their relationship on open communication, on talking about the small things before they become big things. It was the exact opposite of what happened in Harold's marriage.
So he didn't just build a new company. He built a new model for his personal life, too.
And he finally did those things he dreamed of. He and Sarah went backpacking through Europe. The journaling wasn't a chore anymore. It was a daily practice.
And he started a blog to share the story, which created this whole community around the idea. Other people started sharing their Harold moments, their pivotal conversations.
The ripple effect just kept expanding. And he never lost sight of the health lessons either. That story of Harold's heart attack really stuck with him.
So he kept up with the meditation, the regular checkups. He even started a vegetable garden, something real and tangible to ground him from the stress of the tech world.
And the connection with Harold, it lasted. They stayed in touch, met for coffee, right up until Harold passed away in 2022.
And the funeral wasn't a sad affair. It was a celebration of all the lives he had touched.
Our protagonist even gave a speech. He called Harold the man who gave him his rebirth, his second chance. It just cements it, That one random conversation wasn't just a nice memory. It was the starting gun for a whole new life.
So when you look back at all of this, you have to kind of distill it. What were the ingredients? What made that conversation so life-changing when so many others are just forgotten?
I think the sources really break it down to the 3 key things. First, it was timing.
He was ripe for change.
Exactly. He was so dissatisfied, he was ready to hear something new. The soil was fertile, so to speak.
Second was Harold's authenticity. This is so important. He wasn't preaching. He was sharing his own failures, his own regrets. He made himself vulnerable.
And that created trust instantly. It let our guy take off his own corporate armor.
And the third piece was just true listening. Harold didn't give him answers. He asked questions, powerful questions. And then he just listened without judgment and let the protagonist find his own truth.
The whole thing totally redefined what purpose means for him. It's not some far-off destination you arrive at. It's a compass you use every day.
He literally asks himself that Frankl-inspired question with every decision. Does this align with my values?
And Harold's view on regret. That's a huge takeaway. Regrets are teachers, not tormentors.
Right. They're not there to make you feel bad. They're there to show you where you need to pivot. They're data.
So if we zoom out from this one story, what does it tell us about our society, about the need for this kind of conversation today?
I mean, it's massive. In an age where we're all so digital and distracted, real dialogue is more important than ever. Our entire history is built on it.
You think about Socrates' dialogues in ancient Greece. He wasn't writing books. He was talking to people, questioning them. That's how Western philosophy was born.
Or Martin Luther King Jr.'s talks. It was the power of spoken words, of real human connection that fueled a revolution. Conversations are how change begins, on every scale.
On a societal level, it's how we bridge divides, right? If you approach a disagreement with Harold's kind of curiosity, just trying to understand, not to win, you can actually find common ground.
And you're even seeing this in the business world. Companies like Google are realizing that innovation doesn't come from memos. It comes from creating psychological safety, where people feel safe enough to have open, honest, sometimes messy conversations.
That's where the new ideas come from.
Which means we should probably be teaching this in schools. Not just public speaking, but active listening. Empathy. How to ask a good question.
Reclaiming the art of conversation in a world of texting and emojis.
And the science backs all of this up. Big, long-term studies, like the Harvard Grant study, show it over and over again. The single biggest predictor of a happy, healthy, long life.
Strong relationships.
Strong relationships,
Yeah.
built on deep, meaningful conversations. It's the best antidote we have to the modern epidemic of loneliness.
So for you listening, what's the practical takeaway? The protagonist started hosting conversation dinners. No phones, no agenda, just people talking about real things, creating the space for it to happen.
And to keep that fire going, you need structure. Weekly journaling, continuous learning, reading books like Ikigai or Atomic Habits. It's a practice, not a one-time event.
And the final piece, the most important one, is paying it forward.
Absolutely. He now mentors young entrepreneurs. He tutors at a literacy program. He has become herald for the next generation.
The cycle continues. It all just proves that one authentic meeting can completely change a life, and that new life can then go on to change others. It's richer, it's messier, but it's real.
So our final thought for you is really a challenge. In a world that's getting noisier with AI and digital distractions everywhere, these human conversations are our anchor. They ground us. The challenge isn't just to listen to this story, it's to go out and start your own. Strike up a chat with a stranger. Ask a friend a deeper question. Be ready to see the signposts when they show up in your life.
That rainy Seattle day proved that a single authentic conversation has the power to dismantle complacency and lead to a life reimagined. It's a powerful lesson in prioritizing purpose over profit and deep human connection over speed. If you found value in this deep dive into how conversations ignite change, please remember to like, share, and subscribe to this YouTube channel.